Second day. Cry was curled up beneath his blankets, head resting on one pillow and another being held within his arms. Little did he know that his best friend was standing above him, admiring the way he slept. He took notice of the way Cry's eyes shifted beneath his eyelids, and how tightly he clung onto the pillow. He reached down and swept away the hair that fell within Cry's eyes. He slowly bent down over him and whispered, "Wake up, Cry." Cry's eyes shot open and he looked up at Pewdie in slight shock. "Oh, good, you're awake. Come," Pewdie demanded, holding out his hand. Cry blinked, still confused as to say what was going on. He slipped out from beneath the blanket and took Pewdie's hand. Pewdie smiled, although surprised by Cry's action. He expected the introverted maid to reject his hand and just follow him. Pewdie smirked, testing how far he could go, and laced his finger with Cry's own. Cry looked down, face darkening immediately. "Snap out of it, Sleeping Beauty," Pewdie whispered, and pulled Cry out of the room. Down the hall, down the stairs, into the kitchen. A wonderful smell wafted into Cry's nose, and he gave a warm smile. Didn't expect you to be the housewife type," Cry joked. "Well, I'd do anything for you, sweetheart," Pewdie joked back, giving Cry a wink. "Sit," he told Cry, and made a plate for the tired brunette. He set it down before Cry, and Cry smiled with a blush. "You remembered," Cry muttered. "Of course I remembered. How could I forget my best friend's favorite breakfast meal?" Pewdie inquired, tilting his head to the side. He made a plate for himself, filling it with French toast, bacon, and scrambled eggs. They ate in a comfortable silence, and once done, Pewdie washed the dishes even if Cry kept protesting and using the excuse that he was a guest and shouldn't be cleaning. Pewdie replied with, "I cooked, therefore I clean." Cry felt a tad bit guilty and just sat there in silence. He tried occupying his mind with something else, thinking of something fun to do with Cry. With Pewds. What? As he was held up in his thoughts, Pewdie had finished washing the dishes and turned to see Cry in what seemed like a trance. He sat down and stared at Cry, memorizing every detail of his face. He reached over and stroked the side of his face, and Cry noticeably shivered and looked over at Pewdie. "Pewds?" Cry questioned. "What are you doing?" "Admiring you," Pewdie answered truthfully. "I can't admire my best friend?" "No, I mean yes, if you want to," Cry sighed, and Pewdie looked on with amusement. "What would you like to do today?" Cry asked, quickly changing the subject. "The beach?" "It's quite cool, Pewds. You want to swim?" "No, to walk around, just relax and hang out with my buddy," Pewdie answered. Cry gave a smile. "Sure, that sounds fun. I'll get dressed," Cry informed, heading up to the stairs. They both got ready and headed out to the beach. There weren't many people here, but it was still fairly occupied. The sun was shining brightly, and the ocean breeze blew softly. The sound of the ocean waves calmed both of the men, and they felt at ease. Pewdie glanced over at Cry, loving the way the wind rustled his brown wavy locks of hair around. He rolled his eyes and brushed it out of his face. Pewdie chuckled at the sight. Hearing him, Cry looked up at Pewdie questioningly. Pewdie smirked and shoved him, then ran. Cry was surprised by the action and began to chase his friend. Gaining on the blonde, Cry jumped onto his back, making them both tumble and fall, rolling around in the sand. They wrestled, and Pewdie poked at Cry's side, earning a loaf from the brunette. They rolled in the sand, and eventually Pewdie ended up on top of Cry, pinning him down. Well, look who's on top," Pewdie mentioned seductively. "It's all right. I prefer the bottom," Cry said back, deepening the tone of his voice. He wasn't sure where that comeback had come from, but it made Pewdie smirk, mischievously. He leaned forward and whispered into Cry's ear, "I'd love to test that theory." Pewdie ran his hand down Cry's side, earning a shiver and a gasp from the brunette. Pewdie's hands stopped at his hips, squeezing them lightly. Cry bit his lip to keep any noise from escaping him, closing his eyes. "What's wrong, Cry? You seem flustered," Pewdie teased. I'm fine, Cry stuttered in response, reopening his eyes and looking into Pewdie's. They matched the sky perfectly, and Pewdie realized that Cry's matched the ocean. Pewdie smiled, finally lifting himself off Cry, hips brushing against his briefly. Those gorgeous cerulean eyes closed again, and Pewdie grinned, lifting himself off of Cry completely. He held out his hands for Cry, which he took gratefully. "Let's go, Blue Eyes," Pewdie said, pulling Cry along with him. "Where are we going?" Cry asked, still slightly breathless. "The dinner across the bridge. You took me there when I first visited, remember?" "Yeah, I remember," Cry said with a smile, thinking of how excited Pewdie was when they had gone. Those thoughts made him smile, and he squeezed the hand within his own. That's when Cry realized he was still holding Pewdie's hand, and he didn't mind. The two entered the dinner, and was placed at a booth where they could gaze up the beach through a large window. The sun was a tad bit lower in the sky, giving out the right light and making Cry look almost heavenly to Pewdie, especially his eyes. Pewdie would never be able to get over the way they shine like sapphires. "Your eyes shine so brightly within the light. It's beautiful," Pewdie complimented. Cry looked as if he had been thrown off guard by the compliment. "Thank you," Cry whispered, cheeks growing red. He didn't understand why Pewdie was so affectionate towards him lately. He looked up into Pewdie's stunning light blue eyes and finally gave in to curiosity. "Pewds, you've been, flirting with me a lot more than usual. Is there any reason why?" Cry inquired, wondering why the excessive flirting had begun the moment he came to visit. He was used to Pewdie flirting, and he'd do it back jokingly. These 2 days were just filled with seductive comments from the suite. Pewdie pretended to think about it, then smirked at Cry. "Nope." Cry wasn't sure what Pewdie was doing to him, but it was working. He was attracted to Pewdie, but now it had become a fatal attraction, and Pewdie seemed like he knew. A waitress came over, and Pewdie ordered exactly what they had ordered the last time they visited: a large plate of fries and 2 vanilla milkshakes. She walked away, and Pewdie turned to Cry and flashed him a grin. Although Cry blushed, he grinned back at Pewdie. "I'm really glad you're here," Cry admitted. "As I am," Pewdie said. "I'm exceedingly happy to see you, Cry. I don't think talking on Skype is going to cut it for me anymore." "What do you mean?" Cry asked. "Nothing," Pewdie said quite sadly. "Pewds, let's just enjoy the week, Cry, okay?" Pewdie said, quickly avoiding the subject that was about to arise. "Yeah, okay," Cry agreed, and they talked about anything and everything, eating their fries and sipping on their milkshakes. After spending their time at the dinner, they headed home and played video games, then headed off to bed. Before Cry had entered his room, Pewdie pulled him close to his chest, making him gasp. Pewdie held him and lowered his head to whisper in his ear, "Good night, Blue Eyes." Cry shivered at the feeling of warm breath tickling his hair and running along his skin. Pewdie let go of Cry, stroking his cheek, then retreating to his bedroom and closing the door. Cry stood there, dumbfounded, and he whispered back after finding his voice, "Good night, Pewds."